Hello, everyone. My name is Camila. I'm the creator of Let's Talk Miami, where we're simplifying the politics behind some of Miami's biggest local issues. And we're talking to people that are involved in solving some of these issues. And today I'm very excited because we're talking to Miami-Dade County Commissioner Eileen Higgins, who represents District 5, which is actually where I live, Shenandoah. She represents the urban core, which is downtown, Brickell, Little Havana, and parts of Miami Beach. And she's also she's chair actually of various committees that are involved in mobility and transportation, such as the TPO's Urban Mobility Task Force. So, Commissioner, I want to welcome you to the podcast.
Hey, well, thanks. It's great to be here and talking about my favorite subject, transportation. You know, it's interesting. I'm one of the few commissioners that actually rides public transportation on a regular basis in all its forms, whether it's the metro rail, the mover, our bus system, or walking, you know, from time to time. And that has brought a very different perspective to the commission, because I know the system's strengths and I know its flaws, because a lot of it's happened to me as a rider. And when I got elected, I did say I wanted to work on transportation issues. I think it is a critical economic policy, not just a transportation policy. If we can get people to work more quickly, we are going to be more attractive to companies that want to come here. And then also importantly, particularly when you talk about our bus system, 80% of our transit riders are on the bus, right? For good reason. We don't have a giant train system, and we are a big county. But many of those riders who are on the bus they're not choice riders. They have to ride the bus. They're working somewhere where perhaps it's too expensive to park, perhaps they don't have a car. And when the connections are bad on the bus system, it can mean that people are taking 2 hours to go to work. So
yeah, and they can potentially lose their jobs.
Yes, if they're late.
Yesterday, I posted a question on our Instagram asking what are some of the questions that you guys have on transportation? And one of the questions that keeps on coming up is funding. And it seems like people, and including myself, we have this perception that public transportation is just poorly funded. I am one of those kids that grew up with the promise of rail and having the half penny tax and then finding out that instead of using that money for investment on new routes, new rail system, it's been used on maintenance. So people are wondering what's going on, why is the funding just not there, and what is needed to really get some of these mass transit projects moving.
So I, like you, also was deceived with the half penny.
Right.
And what I tell people now is forget about it. Like, the past is the past. Whatever happened, happened. We have the half penny. The half penny is not being used on maintenance. It hasn't been used on maintenance in many years. During the big downturn in 2008, apparently it was. You know, remember we had the giant crash, and they were using it on maintenance. And quite frankly, if they hadn't used it on maintenance, there's a chance the whole bus system and the transportation system would have collapsed, because the county literally had very little revenue coming in from that. So we can debate whether that was a good or a bad idea, but it's over.
Right.
Our commission, I as part of the commission voted we're not going to use it for maintenance anymore. The maintenance of this has to come from what we call the general fund, which means the money that comes from everywhere. And the half penny has to be used for the things that the voters voted for adding new service, maintaining that new service. So for example, you could use it to buy new metro rail cars, you know, so that the cars aren't falling apart. Right. But then when we maintain those cars, we try to pay for that out of the general fund. And what we should be glad about is that we have the half penny, because the half penny has built a lot of things. It has got all new metro rail cars. It has funded all new metro mover cars. It has expanded metro rail to the station. It has allowed us to repair. We always forget, like, the voters voted for some of this money to repair some of our roads. And that has happened too. The voters voted to help improve some roads, and those projects have been completed, and some bridge projects have been completed. So the half penny was, I think, a misnomer, is it's going to build rail. Right. Rail was listed in there, but so was a lot of other things. And the money, listen, was it spent properly? Were the voters deceived? I believe they were, right? Because first of all, we thought there was going to be a half penny coming to transit. Well, no. 20% of that money goes to the cities. So, and they can do whatever they want. Do whatever they want. Oh. Transportation wise, they can do, it has to be transportation-y, but.
Which has resulted in some of the trolleys.
It results in trolleys, but they can also use it on road repairs. They can use it on road signage. But so you take your half penny, now 20% of it is gone. And then we made the Metro Mover free, which I think a lot of people like, but that took away part of the half penny. And then we let all our senior citizens and all our veterans ride for free. So that took away. So we really don't have a half penny at all. We have like a portion of a half penny. But let's be thankful we have it. But let's talk about other funding sources for transit, because the half penny is part of it. And what the half penny allows us to do is pay the local portion of big transit projects. A large rail project, just to give you a sense, heavy rail, it's about $100 million a mile.
Wow.
Okay, to build. And so let's say we're building, 20 miles, it's a $2 billion project. It's expensive. And how those projects get funded is you apply to the federal government and you say, we have a good idea. Here's our plan. Here's the ridership, because we're competing all across the country. And the federal government says, okay, we'll pay for half of that. So they may give us $1 billion or $500 million, whatever the size of the project is. And then we go to the state, and the state funds half of whatever's left. And the state will not give us any money until we have matching funds from the Fed. So you've got to get the federal government to approve it. And then what our half penny does is it funds our portion, right? So it ends up being a partnership between the federal government, the state government, and us. And transit is expensive. Like, don't be deceived. Now, since the half penny was passed, there's actually a lot of new solutions that are a lot less expensive than heavy rail, right? We were promised rail, but do we really care, or do we just want to get from where we are to where we want to go quickly?
We do, and we want to get there fast,
yeah,
and comfortably. And I think
yes,
that's one of the reasons why people don't really use public transportation, because they get that through their car. I mean, at least for me, I don't take the bus because I'll pass the bus more times than the bus passes me, even in traffic, right? Or they'll be stuck in traffic with me too. So what's the point? I'm comfortably inside my car.
And I take the bus for the opposite reason. Like, the buses are going the same speed as a car, so I'd rather be reading.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm like, so, everybody rides transit. Everybody makes their transit choices differently.
Right.
But the reality is, whether it's a Metro Mover, whether it's a monorail, there's some really interesting new technologies that aren't like choo choo choo, that are still comfortable. And by the way, choo 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 is really loud. When
right.
you live near a train track, it is loud. Whereas
I don't live that close to a train track, and I can still hear the train.
It's loud. So there's a lot of new technology, which I call fixed guideway technology, right? They still are guided, that are quieter because they tend to have rubber wheeled tires rather than the metal on metal of rails. So there's a lot of new things that are out there. The county is looking at that. Bus rapid transit, which is what we're going to be doing on the South Dade corridor. And there's a lot of controversy. People said we were promised rail. Well, we all were promised rail. And it ends up, that project, if we would have submitted that to the federal government, would have gotten a low or medium low rating.
For the rail?
For the rail.
Okay.
Because there is not enough ridership, right? If you go down south, there's traffic. But if you look all the way down to Florida City. We don't have density down there yet. And we would have submitted that to the federal government. On rail projects, it takes usually about 5 years to get your rating. So we would have submitted that project knowing we were a low to medium low rating, because we're competing with every other community in the country. 5 years later, they tell us, no, this is your rating. If you're low or medium low, you don't get any federal funding. So we would have been delaying getting people moving from the South. The bus rapid transit, which is only a $300 million project, right, versus a several billion-dollar project. We submit that with our ridership, we get a high rating. Okay. And essentially we submitted the package in August. February, we had our rating. June, we had our money. And we're breaking ground this year.
Right. I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about the bus rapid transit project, because I think people hear bus and while I was researching a little bit about the BRT, it seems like a train kind of. It is. And I want to give you a chance to kind of paint the picture for our listeners to explain this is not just your typical bus on the street.
No, I lived in Mexico. I lived and worked in Mexico City for many years. And Mexico City started to build these bus rapid transit systems. And essentially they're above ground subways, right? Because when you're building heavy rail or you're building a subway, it can take decades. When you're building a bus rapid transit system, from when you break ground to when you're done, it's 1.5 years or 2 years. And they tend to be in the center of the street. You build a station, just like you build a rail station, and they're elevated. You walk into the station. If you're paying, you already swipe. Now you're in a station. It's air conditioned, right? Just like a train station. And as a matter of fact, better than our train stations, because it does have air conditioning. And the vehicle pulls up. They tend to be longer vehicles. In our case, they're going to be electric. So it's very cool. And they have 3 doors that open. And the doors, they're not like regular bus doors. They match with the platform. So you've already paid. You just walk in, you walk out. You're in a wheelchair. There's no slowing down. You wheel your wheelchair in. You're pushing a baby carriage, the little baby goes in. So it feels like a train pulling up. And then what we do is we literally, just like if a train was crossing, you have the arms that stop traffic on either side. So there's no way a car can ever interfere with the flow of that vehicle. So it pulls up to the station, you all get on, there's no swiping, there's no zoom, picking up, everybody wheels on, and the arms don't come up until the bus is already passed. And when you begin to look at what that means for people in South Dade, this system for people that live in Homestead and Florida City is faster than a train, because we are able to run multiple services. So you can start in Florida City and go express to Dadeland South, right? Versus they don't have to stop everywhere. Train, like when you're on a train, there's one track, you stop everywhere. Yeah. So for people in Homestead and Florida City who have the longest commutes, they will save time on this. And everybody else, the travel time would be the same as if you were on a train. Now the trick, and I rode these to and from work in Mexico City. It's a fantastic system. I'm definitely the only commissioner that's ever ridden a bus rapid transit system. And Mexico City has now expanded this. There's I think 5 lines now, and they've all been built while we're still alive, and we can afford to build them. So what we've done with this line is we knew we were going to get high rating. We knew we could get the funding. We also are designing these stations so that when or if the density comes in the South, where we have the ability to expand this to rail, all we have to do is make the stations a little longer. So the stations are going to be built rail ready, if that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah.
So it's very cool. The design team's doing a really good job. And then as our county grows, if we get the ridership where we think we can go to the federal government, say, it's time, we can convert from BRT to rail. And I know some people are disappointed because they were promised rail. I was promised rail. But I also realized if I were to just push rail, we'd have nothing. Right. And so the option is, do I fake that we can get a rail line approved by the federal government? Because it would have been politically really easy to vote for rail. But in voting for rail, I would be voting for nothing.
Right.
I would be continuing to mislead our residents about what's possible given the financing. And now we're going to have bus rapid transit. We're going to break ground this year. It's going to be operating in 2023. if we had voted for rail, we still wouldn't have our rating in 2023 from the federal government.
Wow. No, I think it's the practical solution.
It's a practical solution.
Give some relief, because I see on social media, people are posting pictures, 2 hours stuck on traffic, or every morning, even during the pandemic, you would still see on the TV, the traffic report was always the turnpike in the morning is backed up. And it's like, there's a pandemic and we still have traffic down there.
And it's interesting. We just approved 2 other, like it's 2 sections of bus rapid transit from our east-west.
Okay.
And this is going to start way out at the Tamiami Park and Ride. And then it'll come in to the Panther station at FIU, and it'll go to the Dolphin Mall. And essentially we'll be able to do some of it on 836. The stations will actually be built in the middle. It'll have an on-ramp, so that they can go faster. And then we're looking at how do we do elevators up under 836. So like if you're a person in the neighborhood, you can go up and ride an elevator, be in the station, and it's a dedicated lane. Nobody else can get in it. Boom, boom, boom.
Wow. Okay, hold on. Before we get there, I want to ask you, my perception on the BRT for the South Dade, it seemed that it was feasible because there was already that lane next to US 1.
Yeah.
And so my question, and you kind of answered it, but I want to hear from you is BRT something that can be repeated throughout the county where that kind of land isn't available? Like our streets are already small. Like where would we create an extra lane for a BRT?
So the answer is it can be, which does not mean that all neighborhoods are going to want that. For example, the Kendall corridor, if people would give up a lane, we could probably take 45 minutes off your commute. But politically, like we're a car culture, let's not be confused.
Right.
I mean, people complain, but I think they would prefer to be stuck in traffic than give up that lane so that they could get there quickly. Right. So there are some roads where it's just physically too small. There literally isn't the space. There are others where if we can begin to prove that bus rapid transit can get people quickly. So the South Dade, but this new one that we're doing east-west, it's literally going to connect people from basically the Everglades, far west, all the way in. We're going to have one line that's going to stop at the Metro Rail station at the airport so you can connect to the trains. Okay. And then the other will literally go all the way into downtown. And it'll go along the Blue Lagoon area. And that'll be our first one where we're really adapting streets. And that will give the public the chance to decide, do I like that or do I not like that? Does it worry me? And in this area, a lot of the streets we're adapting are more commercial.
Right.
And so it's a good place to test this on the east-west corridor. And my goal is we get it's called the NEPA package, which is our environmental studies. My goal is to submit that this August. We're already working on that. We have that funded. And then the rating, it's the Federal Transportation Authority does the rating, and they do that in February. And if we get our rating in February, we think it's going to be a really great rating. February of next year, we could get the federal monies the following year.
Okay.
And again, it's another fast-tracked project. And so we'll have 2 of these going at one time, and then the public can decide, are they okay?
Yeah.
Or not.
So could you explain a little bit more about this east to west? Exactly from what part of the west are we connecting to what part of the east? Okay,
so just head out 836, keep going pretty much until like we end. So it'll be going out kind of 836 near there. We have a new Tamiami Park and Ride. We're already building that, which means because folks in that area, they're going to go to a park and ride before they get on, right?
Is that a 137?
Yeah, it's out fast there. And then we'll go to, then we have another big station at FIU, because if you're a student anywhere between downtown and getting to FIU on the bus, whether you're taking the bus on Flagler or on 8th Street,
takes forever.
It's an hour and a half. I've done it. So we can get our students out there. It also gives adults who want to take classes out there. By the way, a lot of people work at FIU.
Right.
And we'll obviously go to the Dolphin Mall because we've got another park and ride. So we have already spent the money on the facilities that would allow our commuters to have a place to park to get on. But those long routes can save 30 to 40 minutes each way if you get on the bus rapid transit. So again, And there's no way to build rail there. There's no place to do it, right?
And you mentioned elevators on 836. So I'm kind of curious about this because on 836, I don't see many people walking towards 836. So exactly, could you explain that?
Well, as we get, depending on where, so part of it might be from a park and ride, right? You might have a little parking ride and then you need to get up. But as we get further in towards like the Blue Lagoon area, yeah, you've got to get up to the station and you're not going to get on the highway. So they're really coming up with some innovative ideas to make sure that if you are in a neighborhood, and there are a lot of neighborhoods on either side of 836, particularly as you get closer in towards the airport in Tamiami, right? It's little houses, and folks would be able to go up there and grab a vehicle. So it's exciting, and I'm pretty sure the federal government's going to love that project.
Yeah.
And then of course we do have some solutions that are going to have to be, I'm not going to say rail, but they're going to be these fixed guideway solutions. Could be a Metro Mover extension, could be a monorail to the beach. It makes sense. There's no other choice because it's that, or you're in the water. Like you have to build an elevated solution. Yeah. And I think the North Corridor going up will probably be some kind of a rail-like solution, because we think we'll end up kind of eventually working with Broward County. So that we have some RFPs out on that. We expect some proposals back by the end of the year. We'll see. We've been technology neutral. We're basically saying to the private sector, look around at what you can build. As long as when I get to a station, I basically walk across the platform and I get on my other vehicle and it's right there. I mean, I know we talk about a one-seat ride, but that's unrealistic. Transit does not go from my house to your house.
No.
It goes from my neighborhood to your neighborhood.
Right. Right.
And so everybody wants that they get on their little thing and they go exactly where they want to go. And it's unrealistic. We've all been, to New York or Washington, D.C. or Chicago or the older systems of London and Paris. You're always switching. And as long as those switches are efficient and it saves you time, what we can't have is where your connection adds 20 minutes to your commute time. That's ridiculous. And if we design station connections, so, you get up, you take the Metro Rail or the mover and you walk across the platform and your vehicle leaves every 3 or 4 minutes, you don't care, because you know how long it can take to get up to the equivalent of Hard Rock Stadium. That's another hour on the bus. So that will probably be some kind of a more elevated option. And those we're working on.
So you mentioned the south, east, west, north. And I always feel like there's just this area that's always missing, and it's Doral, Hialeah, Medley area, which is basically, Hialeah is the second largest city in the county. And it's also one of the areas where we have the most industry. So I know we're not going to get everything done now. I mean, we haven't been getting anything done in the past 20 years. We're finally getting some progress. But I'm just wondering, what's the outlook for that area?
So the east-west corridor goes right by Doral, and Mayor Bermudez is very excited and on board, with this project. And obviously, it's exciting for both people who live in Doral and for the businesses in Doral, because these east-west bus rapid transit stops, Doral has a pretty nice trolley system, and they can look to provide some additional connectivity to that. So theoretically, you get off and go to some of the larger workplaces in Doral. So the east-west corridor is really going to help with Doral, and obviously goes pretty close to Hialeah. We have, as you go out on the Green Line out to Okeechobee and the rest, we're starting to do some more transit-oriented development around the train stations out in that area, so that people can actually live near the train station if they choose to. And some of those projects are still in procurement, some of them are under construction, but the idea is to start to make sure there's housing near our transit hubs and near our transit stations.
And the idea is to create density so that we can get those federal dollars.
Yep. And also because this way I don't have to have a car, right? Housing is more affordable when it is near a transit station, and let's say it's a couple. We could be a 1-car family, not a 2-car family. And by the way, that saves hundreds of dollars a month. It's a lot between insurance and car payment. So the county is very committed, and we are, I actually think we're doing a really good job at looking at our transit stations and saying, what can we build here? And depending on the station and depending on the place, by the way, we're starting to build along the South Dade bus transit way too, because if we begin to build that density and we build our stations so they're expandable to rail, well, all of a sudden it's all coming together to perhaps be able to request rail in the future. Depending on where you are, if you're in the South, you're not going to build a 100-story building, right? You might build a little 8-story building because it's more appropriate. So each station has to be evaluated. The Brickell station, for example, can be a very big high rise. It's got to be neighborhood sensitive.
Right. And so you mentioned that these transit systems take us from neighborhood to neighborhood. So I wanted to talk about the Better Bus Project, because these buses really are the ones that are really connecting within the neighborhood. And we spoke to Transit Alliance at the end of last year, and I thought it was a great project just to give people an increased frequency and make the bus system reliable. So just to give listeners that didn't get to hear about the Better Bus Project, do you mind giving them a brief overview about that and why it's gotten so much attention?
Well, the Better Bus Project, as I said before, 80% of our transit riders are on the bus because we're a giant county and we have actually a very large bus system. But it's been a long time since it had been structurally analyzed to make sure we have the right frequency and the right connections, right? If I'm heading out on the 11 on Flagler Street and then I need to get on 27th Avenue, how long do I wait? And Transit Alliance was part of a community-led initiative that talked to people all around the county about how they use the bus, why they don't use the bus, what might make them use it more, and how we could improve our connections. And by doing that, by increasing frequency and reducing connection time, increase ridership, which is the goal, right? Get people out of cars because the transit system helps them. And we have worked with a consultant that has systematically improved the bus system in Houston and the bus system in Seattle, and they both have seen increased ridership. So we have a great group between Transit Alliance and this consulting firm, really people that have done it. And I think it's something to look forward to, because we have a whole new fleet of buses, right? We basically have our buses, some of them were like old enough to vote, like 18 years old. I mean, they were awful. And we now have this amazing system. We're replacing our bus fleet. We have very few older ones left. We're transitioning all of them to CNG, and we get our first electric buses coming this year. So that's very cool. And it's quieter because part of, you were saying the comfort. Electric buses are quiet. And so it is a more comfortable ride.
What is the implementation and the status on that project?
It's funny, I just had an update on that last week at the committee, so it's perfect timing. The Department of Transportation Public Works has taken all the recommendations from Transit Alliance, made a few tweaks, and they have some proposals. And they are going back out to public meetings. And those meetings are going to kind of look at service. They might do the urban core service, they might do the south service. So people will want to participate in a few of those, and those will be happening. I think they have 9 or 10 that are happening in the next couple of weeks. So we get another round of resident and rider feedback on that. Then the department will assimilate all that information, come back with their recommendation to the board. I am hoping we can approve this in May at the board, because it's not easy to change, right? And I mean, physically change. If we approve the changes in May, we may be moving a bus stop or two. We will have to change signage. Some of the names of the routes might change so that they're easier to understand. We have to update the app. We have to update all the technology. We have to communicate with the riders. And truthfully, we have to also work with our bus drivers, right? Because they have to incorporate a whole new schedule. And we usually make changes twice a year. We do it in November. And the idea would be to make the November schedule change. And that's my hope. But people should definitely see if they're interested in participating about the public meetings. Take a look. They can always call my office if they want to know when they are. But the DTPW, Department of Transportation Public Works, always has that stuff on their social media. Better Bus Project is a first step and something we can implement now and doesn't really require a lot of funding.
Right. Another thing that they talked about was the fact that for centuries, people have been walking and using their bicycles to get to that last mile, that part where the bus leaves you, but it doesn't take you to your house. How do you get from the bus stop to your house? And it's usually been walking or riding your bike. But reality here in our county is that it is not safe to be a pedestrian or a cyclist. So I know that the mayor has this new initiative of Pedestrian First. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about that and what's being done to ensure people's safety and make that actually feasible here.
Well, we're a long way from being where we want to be, right? Which is vision zero for the transit nerds that are watching, right? Where no pedestrians killed during a year and no cyclists. And we are very far away from achieving that. And I was thrilled to hear the mayor say she's going to unveil a pedestrian first transportation master plan, right? Cars are always going to be part of it because we drive here, but pedestrians first, cyclists, transit, cars. And by the way, that is what the city of Miami Beach, that is their master plan for transportation. And we have, because in order to make these changes, county has to approve them. And so I have a great partnership with Miami Beach, which I represent as well. And we made a lot of dramatic changes. Ocean Drive, no cars are on Ocean Drive. Washington Avenue, we have moved the parking so that the bike lane is parking protected. The bike lane is not near moving cars. We've installed a bunch more bike lanes in Miami Beach. I think Monday I'm going to be out. We're playing around with some protection on the Venetian Causeway. We should, within the next 3 months in downtown, break ground on the downtown cycling network, which will go from different Metro Mover stops and obviously over to Government Center for the train. So progress is being made, but it is slow. Obviously, the Underline I have behind me on my virtual background broke ground. We have the first phase open. We have the second phase in design. And that's going to give us 10 miles of safe biking, which will eventually connect to the Ludlam Trail. So little by little, progress is being made, but I agree with you. It's not as fast. And sometimes when I want to do something simple like a new crosswalk, you would think I was trying to put a man on the moon. It's just like, what do you mean? It takes 1.5 years to get a crosswalk approved.
Really? A crosswalk?
It's shocking. That's why I'm also chair of the Urban Mobility Task Force, because we're working on these things. And what we're going to do on that task force is set up some quick build projects, which we'll do 4 or 5. I know one will probably be in Doral, and we'll do a couple in we'll do them in different municipalities, and we'll try to get a state road and we'll try to get a county road. And whether those are bike boxes or a different pedestrian cross, try to break the system. Like, where is the system slowing these changes down? Because almost every person that works in a transportation department in a municipality or local government they're a traffic engineer. That's their degree. Okay. They are not a human being movement engine, we move people. And so it's a cultural change. Don't be confused. And the board is going to always want cars to move too. We are, right? Because let's be real. We have a lot of cars. And I'll tell you one thing we've done. We spent almost $200 million, big money, on our ATMS system, the automated traffic management system. And that is we are literally going to change every single traffic light in the county to be a smart signal.
So wait, what does that mean? Because
everyone.
That is something that I wanted to talk about. Because we hear about these amazing public transportation projects, but like you mentioned, they take a couple years. And in the meantime, we're still stuck in traffic. And one of the questions has always been, why don't we have automatic lights? Because we go from one block, it's green, and then the next one is red. And you're just stop and go, and no one's passing. You're like, why am I here?
So, sometimes we want you to stop if you're in a pedestrian neighborhood because we don't want you killing people. We want to slow you down. So we purposely give you a red light, but it's a safety issue. But these new traffic signals essentially can in real time decide what's happening at a signal. So for example, even at night, let's say you're somewhere and you're the only car and you're just trapped at a red light. Like, why? There's no one else. Why can't it change? These signals are able to see literally what cars are there, and they're able to make a light a little bit longer, a little bit shorter to help move traffic. So we are going to upgrade. It's about a 3-year project, but it will upgrade every single signal. I think there's 2,500 or 2,600. So it's a giant job. The other thing is we're testing. I've got a pilot going on in Miami Beach, and then I think we're installing a little pilot on the Underline, or the M path. It's not yet the Underline, further south. But these smart signals also have the ability to see if a cyclist is coming through an app. So it's a free app, but you put it on your phone, on your bike, and the phone is beaming to the traffic signal that a cyclist is coming. And if they can, they might let the green light last another 10 seconds, or maybe they can facilitate making the light turn green a little earlier. So right now we're doing a pilot just to test and learn and see how that goes. And that is something we might be able to do at heavy cycling signals.
Yeah. What's the timeline for that?
It's starting. It's already funded. It's starting. They're already doing the analysis. They've picked a couple of, some of the worst traffic is out west, obviously. So they're already starting and prioritizing that. So little by little,
the West is already starting to get these lights changed?
Yeah, I'm not sure that they've completely installed them, but they're doing all the analysis because it's major electrical work. They literally have to, and then they'll do it.
And the expectation is that within 3 years, all the lights.
Yeah, that's pretty much we should see improvements. And we did a test on US 1 and it improved traffic by 20 minutes. It took 20 minutes off the drive from far. So we only have that one street done, but now we'll have everybody.
So your background is the Underline, and we've mentioned it, so we have to talk about the Underline. It's one of the coolest projects I've seen since I've been in Miami, and I wanted to give you a chance to talk about it.
Okay, well, the Underline is cool, everybody. Miss Meg Daly and the Friends of the Underline came up with this idea to take the wasted space under our Metro Rail tracks and turn it into a 10-mile linear park. And she built a network to make it happen. And we have put together a lot of funding. The county is funding a lot of it. We actually have several people full-time working on the design and the implementation and overseeing construction. We also were lucky enough, we got a giant federal grant we applied for, and the Underline received that. And the municipalities are also participating. So the city of Miami, very generous with the Underline, city of Coral Gables, city of South Miami. So it really is like a community-wide effort to make sure that this baby gets built. The first phase was the most complicated. So it's only a half a mile, but it has, it had to go under Calle Ocho and downtown and Brickell, and the underground utilities there, it's complicated. So they built that first. And we now have the phase 2, which will go from essentially Southwest 13th Street, the end of Brickell, all the way down to 19th Avenue. That's already in the middle of design. We started to have public meetings so people can give ideas. And that will be breaking ground probably within the next year. And we are pretty close to issuing the procurement because we got this big federal grant. We're going to be able to make phase 3. Originally was 5 phases. Phase 3 is now the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
All the way down because we got so much money from the federal government, because they like you thought it was a fantastic project.
Yeah, and that's really innovative.
It's really innovative. And so that piece is where we will put that out for procurement to see which design or engineering firm might want to take that piece of it up. And so you'll start to see we've made some intersection improvements already on US 1. We'll have to make some more, because once we have more cycling on there, you're not going to be turning right on red. So you right turn on red turners, get used to it. That's you're going to have to change your behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. We're going to have to watch out for our baby carriage pushers and our bike cyclists.
But it's worth it because, like you mentioned, it's meant to keep people safe, that make walking and cycling safer.
Yeah. So that's coming. It's, we've been talking about it, but it is under construction. It is opening. It's moving forward. And by the way, to all your listeners, a lot of the funding comes from little human beings like you and me. And join the Friends of the Underline, because they are going to maintain it. They're going to continue to raise funds. And whether it's $20 or $200 or whatever in the federal government, $30 million, give a little donation, because it's a community-led initiative. Government supported it, but the community started it.
I wanted to close off this episode on just that note. I noticed that the Underline was funded mainly, it was a mix of public and private as well as community. And I was wondering, is it possible to replicate that same model for these other massive transit projects that we're talking about?
Yes. And I think we're going to see more and more of it. And we have to become comfortable with this, because the private sector can benefit from transit.
Yes.
And as a result, we used to always think about public transportation has to be funded by the public. But when we put a train station in a neighborhood or expand the Metro Mover somewhere, the property around that can become much more valuable. And so to the folks that own it there, it's a revenue generator for them.
Yeah.
And I think the expectation from the county is that these property owners are going to participate in helping with the funding of some of these. And so the beach corridor is an example where I fully expect to have private sector participation in the payment of that. And the other one that I think we will expect private sector participation on is the North Corridor. And what that means is it gives us a fourth funding source, right? I talked about federal, state, and local. This gives us a fourth funding source. And we probably should have been using that earlier and realizing that these property owners want transit just as much as the riders or the potential riders.
Yeah, they have a stake in the project, and at the end of the day, it benefits them. I saw that a lot of developers were funding the Underline. It makes complete sense. It's a beautification project for the Underline, but it's also a quality of life project, and people want to live there. And you have property there. So I love the idea.
And for example, we're building some housing at Douglas Road, and the developer is renovating the station there. And so unfortunately, there'll be 3 weekends coming up in April where we'll have some construction on your station, but don't worry, we'll have a bus for you to get by. Awesome. But at the end, it'll have nice, beautiful tile, and it'll have newer escalator. And
Commissioner, thank you so much for joining. And I want to give you a chance to give you some last words of encouragement, and if there's something that you would like to let people know about how they can get more involved in some of these projects.
All I can tell you is when I started on the commission, I was depressed about transit. I didn't think we were ever going to make any progress. And here it's 2.5, almost 3 years later, and more progress has been made in the decision-making phase and beginning to get these projects moving than has been made in the last 30 years. And certainly I was one vote, but I wasn't the only vote. The commission has begun to come together to say, we've got to move these things forward. And I think that is something we didn't have several years ago, even 5 years ago. If it wasn't happening in my district, can't happen in your district. And we don't think like that anymore. So I hope people feel confident about that. And like I said before, we just got to stop talking about the half penny. We were all lied to, but let's not worry about it. That money is now helping us build the transit system that we need going forward. And that's exciting. And then follow what's happening, come to public meetings. It's very exciting. Like the East-West corridor, just look for these things. If you want to have input, the Department of Transportation, Public Works, sometimes it's FDOT, they really have done a good job. And as a matter of fact, they make it more accessible now because you can do it by Zoom. It's very exciting. They have these cool tools. So if you ever have any questions, just call our office, 305-375-5924, or District 5, that's the number 5, not the word 5, District 5 at miamidade.gov. And if it's a question in another district, we'll point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Commissioner, and everyone else. Thank you for tuning in, and remember to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Instagram at Miami Talks Politics and on Twitter at Talking Miami. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.